Anderson Silva called me, Dan Henderson called me, and Gegard Mousasi was really, really interested in doing this fight too. You know, obviously each guy presented different problems. Gegard has a fight on UFC 200, so we'd be leaving, you know, a guy who prepared and got ready, you know, for his fight with Gegard with no opponent, which I hate. And then Dan Henderson, you know, called and wanted the fight, and I appreciate that, but we got plans for Dan. Then Anderson Silva wanted the fight, and he hadn't gone through any medicals. So had gallbladder surgery a couple months ago and hadn't done any of the medicals, which is almost impossible. I mean, if you ask somebody, I mean, if we were trying to get medicals done for Anderson Silva on a Monday, the week of the fight, or any fighter, it's next to impossible. But so a lot of people got together and pulled this thing off. Anderson went through all his medicals, passed with flying colors, and he is here, and he will fight Daniel Cormier tomorrow, or Saturday, on UFC 200.
Anderson, do you feel in physical condition? Obviously, Daniel had a hard training camp, is in great shape. What kind of condition are you in to contend with one of the best fighters in the world?
Anderson, você acha que você está em bom condicionamento físico? É claro que o Daniel passou por um treino, um camp inteiro. Você acha que você está na condição para lutar com o campeão mundial?
Eu acho que sim. Eu acho que é um desafio, né? Para que eu estou enfrentando. Eu acho que não quero que as pessoas achem, nem o próprio Cormier ache que eu estou menosprezando ele ser o campeão, ou que supostamente alguém pode desafiar o campeão dessa forma. Eu não vim aqui para desafiá-lo, mas sim para me colocar à prova, para me testar. Eu acredito que eu posso fazer uma boa luta com ele, sim, mesmo estando há tanto tempo sem treinar, vindo de cirurgia e tal.
Yeah, I think I'm in good shape, and I don't want Daniel or anyone else to think that I'm underestimating her, coming in here to try to challenge a champion. I'm not doing any of that. I'm here to challenge myself, and I think that I haven't trained in a few months, but I think I'm in good condition to go in there and put on a good fight.
His wrestling is obviously a big factor. Does that concern you going into the fight, given you haven't had a chance to drill against that for a long time?
O wrestling dele, claro que é um grande fator. Isso te preocupa entrando na luta, já que você não tem treinado isso há um tempo?
Então, se eu tivesse preocupado, eu não ia poder estar aqui, né? Então, assim, luta é luta, né? Eu já passei por todas as coisas piores que podem acontecer dentro do UFC, lutando. Então, acho que nada mais vai ser surpresa, né?
You know, if I was worried, I couldn't be here tonight and announcing this. So a fight's a fight, and I've gone through a lot. I've gone through a lot of bad things in my fights in the UFC, so anything can happen, but I'm prepared.
Dana, a couple for you. Number one, I know any fighter in Nevada, 35 or older, has to go through that special thing. So how did you get around that? Because
we didn't.
You know, so what happened?
He had to do all those tests that they have to do. We got it all done in one day. That's nuts.
Okay, and then how competitive do you expect Anderson to be able to be, given, you know, he had gallbladder surgery, hasn't been training, and he's fighting, you know, arguably the number 2 or 3 guy in the world?
Let me tell you what. We just walked in here from a fight that just ended in the first round. Nobody, I mean, the way that he just finished, anything can happen in this sport. Bisping came in on 11 days and knocked out Luke Rockhold, who destroyed him in their first fight. Anything is possible in a fight.
And my last question is for you, and Anderson obviously has a big name, a Hall of Fame type fighter. Do you think that this makes up for the loss of John Jones in terms of pay-per-view sales and you know, the buzz around the card?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting, fun fight. Listen, Anderson Silva's undefeated at 205, and not just undefeated, devastatingly undefeated. I mean, every time he's moved up to 205, he looked even better than he did at 85, which is crazy.
Was part of this for you, Anderson, and you making the decision, just the historical importance of UFC 200? I can see that little glimmer in your eye when Kevin was kind of talking you down. You've got to be excited about coming in here as not talking him down, but being an underdog in this fight. Are you excited by this challenge, especially at UFC 200?
Você está animado com esse desafio, sendo o azarão aqui entrando no UFC 200?
Eu tô, sabe por quê? Porque assim, eu já passei por várias fases aqui dentro do UFC, né? Ninguém conseguiu bater os meus feitos até hoje, e ter um desafio como esse, para mim, é sensacional. Ter a oportunidade de lutar com um cara como Cormier e aqui dentro do UFC, eu sou um cara abençoado. Eu só posso dizer que muito obrigado ao Dana e a todos os meus fãs, né? Porque, independente do resultado, eu estou aqui para me testar. Eu não estou aqui para provar nada para ninguém, nem para dizer que eu sou melhor que ninguém. O que eu já fiz foi feito, e eu acredito que ninguém vai chegar perto do que eu fiz.
You know, I've gone through a lot of phases in my UFC career, and no one's been able to beat everything that I've done. And so, you know, I really feel like I'm a blessed guy. Thanks, Dana, for making this happening. But I don't think anyone's going to be able to do what I've done, and I'm just very happy to be able to come in here and face a guy like Daniel Cormier.
For Dana, can you talk about why you made this a non-title fight and at 205 pounds? It would seem if it's going to be a non-title fight, you know, why make Cormier get down to weight, that sort of thing?
Well, Cormier's got to get the weight because he's a 185-pounder. You know what I mean? He has fought at 205, but at the end of the day, his whole career has been at 185 pounds. And it's a 3-round fight because Anderson's coming in on short notice. You know what I mean? To go for the full fight. And believe me, we talked about that. I mean, if Anderson comes in and would stop Cormier in the first 3 rounds, I mean, it would be for the title. And Anderson's philosophy was, listen, if I beat Daniel Cormier, people are going to know I'm the guy anyway. But it's a little bit better getting that belt. We have to agree to disagree on that one.
Fair
He
enough.
wants to fight 3 rounds. He's coming in, and Anderson's given Daniel the opportunity to fight, to make money, and to perform on UFC 200. So if Anderson wants 3 rounds, if Anderson wants 2 rounds, we'll give him 2 rounds.
And for Anderson, can you tell us what weight he is at right now? Is there any cutting to be done, or what weight is he going to come in at?
Qual peso você está agora? Você tem que cortar peso? Como é que você vai estar amanhã?
Eu estou bem, estou no peso, e ainda bem que eu não tenho que cortar peso.
I'm on weight, and thankfully I don't have to cut any weight.
Thanks. And just one last one, Dana, for you. I guess it was announced also that Miesha Tate and Amanda Nunes will now be the main event. Is that
Right.
correct?
That's right.
Okay. Can you talk about the decision there? I guess we all kind of assumed it was going to be Brock and Mark after everything happened.
Yeah, so like I said, last night, when I was sitting right here and Daniel was standing here, we were a little shell-shocked, and my whole team was trying to regroup. You got to understand, you guys really don't understand. When something like this goes down, I don't know if you saw the front of the building at the T-Mobile today, they were ripping down John Jones' picture, and we were changing all the commercials, and my staff literally been going 24 hours, more than 24 hours, with this thing happening. And, as you sit back and you sit down and you start to regroup and start to lay things out, and now we have Dan, Mousasi, Anderson, one of these guys is gonna get the fight. And then you start looking at 3-rounder. Miesha is the woman who beat the woman who beat the woman. She's the champ. I mean, what Miesha accomplished a few fights ago, you can't disrespect that. She should be the main event she deserves to be. The other title fight is an interim title fight. Miesha Tate deserves to be the main event. It's the right thing to do.
Dana, over here to your right. What was Daniel Cormier? I mean, obviously we saw the embedded. He wanted to fight. So what was his reaction when you called and told him and talked to him about Anderson?
No, every person I called him and talked to him about it, he's like, yeah, cool. He wanted to negotiate for Anderson to fight at 210. I said, he ain't fighting at 210, man. They're going to say no to that. And he said, just ask. Anderson said no.
Question for Anderson. I know you've kind of become friendly with John Jones over the years. What was your reaction to the news about him, testing positive, dropping out of the fight? I mean, what was your reaction to that?
Você virou amigo do John Jones nos últimos anos. Como é que foi sua reação com tudo que aconteceu ontem?
Eu fiquei muito triste pelo ocorrido, né? Porque ele passou por várias atribulações e eu tenho plena certeza que ele estava muito preparado para lutar com o Cormier e com certeza seria um grande espetáculo. É lógico que com essa vinda da USADA dentro do UFC, algumas coisas ficaram mais profissionais. E a gente tem que ter todo o cuidado com o tipo de suplemento, com o tipo de remédio que a gente está tomando, porque qualquer coisa pode acontecer, né? Então, espero que ele se recupere o mais rápido possível e espero que ele não leve a mal de eu ter pedido para lutar no lugar dele e eu espero que ele volte logo.
You know, I was sad. I know he went through a lot, and I know he was very well prepared to fight Daniel Cormier. But you know, with the USADA coming into the UFC, things have gotten a lot more professional. We have to watch out for everything that we put in our bodies, every supplements, and things can happen. You know, so I think something happened, and I hope that he doesn't get mad that I took his place.
How quickly after you heard the news did you call Dana or the UFC and say you wanted the fight?
Quanto tempo depois você ficou sabendo que você ligou para pedir essa luta?
Acho que umas 2 horas depois eu liguei para o meu empresário, para o Ed, e o Ed ligou para o Dana.
I think about 2 hours later, I called my manager Ed, and he called Dana.
Literally, when I walked out that door last night, they called me.
And last question, obviously just your thoughts on Daniel Cormier. I mean, obviously he's the light heavyweight champion for a reason. He's a phenomenal wrestler. You know, what are your thoughts on how you match up with him?
E o que você acha do Cormier? Claro, ele é o campeão, ele é um grande wrestler. O que você acha da sua luta com ele?
Eu acho que vai ser interessante, né? Eu vou ter que correr bastante dele.
I think it's going to be interesting. I'm going to have to run from him a lot.
I'm joking, boss. I'm joking. No, I come to fight.
And Anderson, right in front of you here. Scales for weigh-ins open in about 10 hours. The fight's Saturday night. What's your process between now and fight night? What do you have to do to be as physically, mentally prepared for this as possible?
Amanhã a balança vai abrir para você se pesar e depois tem o período até a luta. Como é que você faz nesse tempo? Como é que é a sua mente até o horário da luta?
Então, a princípio eu estava vindo para uma outra coisa. Eu já estava vindo para cá para uma outra coisa, para as promoções do UFC e tal, e vindo com os meus filhos. Então, eu vou fazer o que eu sempre fiz, né? Vou pro shopping, tomar sorvete, sei lá, vou fazer o que eu sempre fiz.
You know, I was coming to Vegas regardless for some UFC commitments, and I came with my kids. So, you know, we're going to do as what we were going to do before. We're going to go to the mall, and we're going to have some ice cream and hang out.
My question is for Dana. Dana over here. Obviously, Daniel Cormier is the champion. If Anderson does beat him, could this set up a potential rematch this time for the title?
I don't know. Yeah. Yes, I guess.
I mean,
Yeah.
I guess the theory is since DC is the man and he beats the man, then I guess it gives him maybe a shot at facing him for the gold.
Yeah, we'll see how this thing plays out. We'll see how this thing plays out. Listen, I mean, anything can happen. You guys know how the sport is. The sport's crazy.
And my other question is to Anderson. Obviously, the dream fight has always been between you and GSP, but this is a big fight as well. How does this compare to that dream matchup? And in a lot of ways, is it a bit bigger considering you're on UFC 200?
É claro que a luta que todo mundo sempre quis ver era você e o Georges St-Pierre. Como é que essa luta se compara com essa luta? E, pelo menos estando no UFC 200, é também muito grande, né?
Claro, é um desafio muito grande para mim poder estar lutando nesse evento. E, claro, que eu queria estar lutando na minha categoria e pelo cinturão, mas não vai acontecer. Mas eu estou feliz de estar aqui e é um grande desafio para a minha carreira, para tudo que eu conquistei até hoje, com vitórias e derrotas. Eu acho que o que vai ficar são os feitos, né?
Of course, it's a great challenge fighting in this event, and obviously I wanted to be fighting in my own weight class for the belt, but, you know, I'm here, and it's a great challenge for everything that I've done through wins and defeats and everything, so it's a great challenge for me.
And just speaking of your belt, obviously a lot of people trying to figure out who Michael Bisping should defend his belt against next. I'd love to know your thoughts. If you could choose between, obviously, Dan Henderson and some of the other guys, who do you think you choose?
Está todo mundo falando ainda quem que vai encarar pelo cinturão o Michael Bisping, né? Tem muitos nomes por aí, mas quem que você escolheria?
Olha, se eu fosse escolher, eu ia escolher o Spider.
Look, if I was going to choose someone, I'd pick the Spider.
That's a shocker. I knew that was coming. We'll take one more question. We got the next crew coming in here for the next press conference.
Right here, just for you, Dana.
Go ahead, honey. Oh,
Sorry. No, if they want to go first, they can.
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. She can go, and then I'll get you.
Anderson, eu queria saber como é que foi a sua recuperação desde a cirurgia e se você podia falar um pouquinho quão pesado você estava treinando nessas últimas semanas.
Poxa, assim, foi uma coisa assim que me pegou bem de surpresa, né? Porque eu estava um dia de viajar e, de repente, eu passei mal e eu estava sozinho em casa. Eu achei que até que eu ia morrer. Falei, caramba, logo agora, não. E aí, assim, eu tava treinando como se fosse a minha primeira luta, né? Porque eu acho que eu tô num recomeço, assim. Apesar de algumas pessoas acharem que eu tô no final da minha carreira, mas eu acho que eu tô num recomeço, né? E aí acabou que eu tive que não lutar, não pude lutar em Curitiba. Era uma coisa que eu queria fazer muito, não pude lutar. Mas eu acho que tudo tem o seu tempo, tem sua hora.
The question was, how was the recovery from your surgery and how hard were you training? And I was at home actually the day before I was supposed to travel to go fight, and I was all alone at home. I thought I was going to die when I started feeling sick, and it was something that I didn't expect to happen, and I had to back out from the fight in Curitiba, which is something that I've always really wanted. But this is a new beginning for me. A lot of people think this, I'm towards my end, but I think this is a new beginning for me.
E você estava treinando nessas últimas semanas? Quão pesado você estava treinando?
Você está perguntando se eu estava treinando?
Fez sparring?
Assim, eu nunca parei de treinar, na verdade. Mas treinar mesmo eu não estava, porque eu não imaginava que eu ia lutar, que ia acontecer. Mas, assim, se você quer a paz, você tem que estar sempre preparado para a guerra. Então, eu estou sempre treinando, né? Não estava treinando, até porque eu estava curtindo esse tempo com a minha família.
Chegou a fazer sparring?
Eu fiz um treino, fiz um sparring de boxe ontem à noite.
The question was, how hard were you training, and if you've done any sparring sessions? And I wasn't really training that hard. Obviously, I'm always training, and if you want peace, you got to be ready for war. But I wasn't really training that hard or preparing for any fight, and I actually sparred yesterday.
All right.
Awesome. And, yeah,
What was your
just for you,
question?
it was just, can you take us through the process a little bit, what happens between now and fight night? You mentioned having to change the posters, the commercials, and everything. Do you do that again at this point, or is it too close to the fight to really do that? And what do you do to create awareness for this?
So we didn't know it was Anderson until 7:30 tonight. Okay, so at 7:30, we knew it was going to be Anderson, but the team had been we had counted on hoping it was going to be Anderson, so they started working on that stuff this afternoon. So yeah, all the materials have been changed, and the things that can be changed. So it's time consuming, it's expensive, and it sucks, but it's what you got to do. Cool? Thank you guys, appreciate it. Need to swap out batteries real quick.
All right, everyone, thank you for your patience. Tonight's attendance, 7,760, 7760 for a live gate of $690,526. Fight of the night went to Joban and Muhammad, and our performances of the night, Eddie Alvarez and Pedro Munoz, $50,000. Eddie Alvarez will be joining us here in probably about 5 minutes or so. With that being said, let's go ahead and take the first question. Kick us off, John. Oh, I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead. Teammates.
Just for Rafael, right here. Obviously a difficult outcome for you tonight. Can you just talk about what went wrong? It seemed like you had a strong start, and then once you got caught with a big punch, it kind of obviously derailed a bit.
Yeah, no excuse, man. I was in the best shape of my life. I want to give all the credits for Eddie. He did a great job. But I was with my hands up when I got caught. I just saw the punch. I was watching. And that's a fight game, man. Happened, you know. And I won 10 on the last 11, you know. Yeah, but all the credits for Eddie, you know. He did a great job. But I think I just got caught.
Yeah, and another one for you. No champion in this weight class has been able to defend the belt more than 3 times. What is it about this division that makes it so challenging to stay on top for a really long time?
Yeah, it's a tough division. It's one of the deepest division in UFC, and I'm pretty sure I'll be back. I will get my belt back.
For Joe, very quick fight tonight. It looked unbelievable. How important was this victory for you just after what happened in the last one, your first UFC loss, to rebound with such a strong performance? And just how did you see the fight going that quickly when you were preparing for it?
Yeah, it was huge for me. I needed a bounce back after the last fight. You know, the timeout definitely done me good. I didn't see the fight going that quick at all, but I was just glad to get the win.
And finally for Derek, you seem very disappointed in the cage with your performance. Afterwards, you said you want an immediate rematch with Roy. Now that you've had a little bit of time to digest it, do you feel any differently, or are you still, feeling low about how you performed out there?
No, I still want a rematch. I promised my fans a finish, and I never won by decision, so I didn't expect to win here tonight. But it is what it is. But I would like a rematch real soon.
Yeah, when they were reading the cards, did you feel it was going to go your way, or did you feel it was going to be Roy's fight?
I wasn't even listening to the cards. I was just wishing that I would have finished them in the first round.
Derek, as the fight was unfolding, it was obvious the difference in strategies. You were looking to strike, he was looking to clinch and put you up against the cage. How did you feel your performance was unfolding as it went? Because your takedown defense was there early on, you were able to stay up. So, were there positives, or did you feel it was negative from the beginning?
I felt like it was negative. I believe I was too conservative with my energy. I couldn't finish him in the first, and so I thought for sure I was going to finish him in the third.
And I know you weren't listening to the cards, but how about your head? What did you think? It basically all came down to that third round, how you saw the third round, whether your strikes at the end were worth more than his takedowns. What did you think? Did you feel confident as you stepped in there?
Never in my wildest dreams I ever thought I was going to win by decision. So I guess it was a blessing.
Question for Rafael dos Anjos. Rafael, there was a moment in that round where Eddie Alvarez, you had been rocked, but Eddie Alvarez threw that flying knee and it looked like maybe gave you a chance to recover your position. Were you still out of sorts at that point, or did you feel that there might be a moment to turn the fight around?
Yeah, I just remember the moment that I got caught. And I think I ended up on top. But then I remember when I was standing, and there was about 30 seconds left or something, and the referee stopped the fight.
Question for Derek Lewis. Derek, a win like this over a top-notch opponent like Roy Nelson could possibly propel you into the top 10 of the heavyweight division. A lot of guys in your position would be calling out a top 10 opponent rather than calling for that rematch with Roy Nelson. Obviously, getting that finish rather than the decision is very important to you. Is that just pertaining to this fight, or is that just a quality with you that you feel like this would just kind of continue to eat at you if you didn't have a chance to finish Roy next time?
Yeah, it's for sure going to eat at me. You know, my whole camp, we practice on finishing this guy. You know, we believe we could do it. I know damn sure I believe I could do it, and to not come out with the finish in the first round, like I knew I was going to, like I knew I was going to, but I didn't, and it hurts a little bit.
Thanks.
Yeah, I've got a question. Rafael, you said just a moment ago, you said, I know I'll be back. Then you said, I think I'll be back. Do you mean at 155 pounds? Do you think, is this the point where you're going to maybe move up, as you had spoken about going to welterweight?
I will be back on the lightweight division. I think it's my division. I'm 31 years old. I still have a lot to do, you know, a lot to improve. And I was speaking, you know, with my coaches after fight, trying to figure out what I did wrong. But, you know, when I got caught, my hand was up. You know, I had a good form at that time. Just happened, you know. Unfortunately, happened with me today. But let's move on. Congratulations for Ed.
He seemed much bigger than you tonight. I mean, did he feel more powerful? Was he bigger than you expected him to be?
No, I didn't feel he that strong. But I think the problem, most of the guy on my division look bigger than me. I think because I got a heavy bones, maybe my head's too big. It's kind of heavy, and I have heavy bones. But I didn't feel like strength-wise difference with Eddie tonight.
And I should ask, people are talking about the fact that there are now no longer any Brazilian champions. Perhaps Claudia can change that tomorrow. But is that something that you've internalized?
Yeah, I was the only one left, but I think Brazil, was everything where everything started. You know, a lot of fighters, you know, come from Brazil, and we've been doing this for long years. New champions will become, for sure. I believe new champions will come. New champions will come.
Great. And lastly, for you, the Beast, I'm sorry if somebody asked you this, I can't remember. Did you feel very confident when the scorecards were being read? Because I feel like, I personally, I thought they were going to give it to Roy, and it was a very close fight, obviously. Did you feel confident that they were going to give it to you?
You know, we in Vegas, his hometown, you know, so I believe he landed like 7 takedowns on me, but he didn't do any damage. Yeah. And so I believe I got like 50-some significant strikes. I thought for sure that I was going to win, but still, I was still bummed that it was by decision. You know, I don't like going to decision at all, for real.
Great. Well, congratulations.
Appreciate it.
Question for Eddie Alvarez to your right. There you go. Congratulations, of course, on the victory. You said before the fight you love being the underdog. You relish that role. But obviously you made a pretty big statement tonight. I mean, could you envision the fight going any better than it did?
No. Mark Henry's the brains behind our whole operation. I owe everything to Mark Henry. He's gotten me. He improved so much since I've been with back home in Philadelphia. They got my body working in ways, my defense cleaner, and just doing things differently. And I can't take much credit other than just trying to get prepared for the fight. And I owe everything to my coaches and my teammates. So.
Leading into the fight, everyone was talking about you've been a champion in every organization but the UFC. And you weren't talking a ton about the title, but now that you have it sitting in front of you, what does it mean to you to add that to your resume, to add that to your legacy?
This has always been like a marathon for me, not a sprint. Everybody's always asked me, when are you going to go to the UFC? When are you going to challenge? Telling me what I should do and when I should do it. I just think if you work hard enough and you love something, these belts and things like this are just byproducts of it. This will not be here forever. But I just think just working hard and doing something you're passionate about is important. And you know, right now we have the belt, and I'm the champion. I told a lot of people I would be, so happy.
You've obviously throughout your career, you're kind of known, you know, for being involved in some crazy brawls. You've had some epic fights, you know, back and forth fights throughout your career. Do you feel like this is more of the norm now, that you go out and dominate? I mean, obviously Rafael's a phenomenal fighter. You went out there and dominated. Do you feel like that is the new Eddie, working with Mark Henry and the coaches, that, you know, maybe those close fights or those battles, or do you feel like you can really go out and dominate these lightweights?
I can. I just need to build confidence in my ability to communicate with Mark Henry and the rest of the team. I've only been with these guys for like 6 months, and he has a playbook that's longer than half the textbooks you guys got. So I've just been building with him, building with Anderson Franca and Ricardo Almeida, just learning to communicate with each other, and it's been helping big time. I've made so many big improvements. So I'm excited at where I'm at in my career and the improvements that I'm making, so happy.
And last question, I know you're a big team guy. I mean, obviously you're there for your teammates. Seeing your performance tonight, what's your prediction for your teammate Frankie Edgar on Saturday night?
Frankie will win the title. I know Frankie Edgar. I know what he's capable of, and I know what kind of man he is. He's gonna win that title. I can pinch myself because Frankie walked in the Fight Factory, a small gym I was training in 9 years ago with Mark Henry to do some sparring. And we started working together, and I said, every time you come to Philadelphia, I'll come to New Jersey. And then that was that. Me and Frankie worked together for the past 9 years off and on, and now we're about to win dual championship titles on the same exact weekend. It's crazy. I can't even think about it.
Eddie, congratulations on your win. A couple of interesting future matchups possible for you. Obviously, Khabib's up there. Also, Tony Ferguson, if he wins his next fight. And Twitter's been blowing up. A lot of people want to see a Conor McGregor-Eddie Alvarez fight happen as well. I mean, it's very, very soon. I know you're just sort of relishing the title, but if you had to choose what's next for Eddie Alvarez, what would you go with?
For me, I think by far the best lightweight in this division is Rafael Dos Anjos. I had the better night tonight, for sure, but this can go either way. There's great competitors, and there's a real small margin for error. And if you mess up once, it could have been me on the other end of that punch. So this guy to the right of me is the best in the division. So to be able to come out with a win over him, and before him was Pettis, and before him was Gilbert. These are the best guys in the division. I'm not taking on top 15 top. So I would ask Dana White, please, to give me an easier fight like Conor McGregor. I deserve that. I've been fighting the best guys, so I would like a gimme fight. So Conor, I'm more than welcome that.
Well, speaking of the Conor McGregor matchup, obviously you have a very, very exciting style. How would you see a fight between you two playing out, considering his skill set as well?
I just look. There's a lot of guys in the UFC who are good at one thing, and they get matched up stylistically well, and they make their way to the top without ever going against the best guys, the true best guys like Rafael Dos Anjos and the best guys in the division. They sneak their way around them, and they live off perception, not what really is. He's one of them. So I think he can get found out if he was ever to fight Rafael Dos Anjos or fight myself. He'll get found out very quickly.
Last question is for Rafael. Over here, Rafael. If Khabib doesn't get the next title shot, would that be a matchup you'd be looking to take?
I think I won in my last 11 fights, I won 10. And I really like the rematch, you know. It's something that I'm looking for. And Khabib hasn't fought for 2.5 years. It's hard to speak about the guy that hasn't fought for a while. I've been active, you know, and I think for me, I would I don't want to take out the Eddie credits tonight. He did great. He faced the best Rafael dos Anjos ever. I did everything perfect on my fight camp. And congratulations to him. But I think the rematch would be what I would like.
Go ahead, Mike.
For Eddie. Eddie, obviously, before you got to before you got to the UFC, you were dealing with a lot of contract issues, just a long line of stuff. Was there any doubt at that point, at any point there, that you wouldn't reach this moment, you wouldn't get this opportunity to realize this dream of being a UFC champion? And how hard was that process for you before finally getting over here?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you. I was put through the ringer. I sold. We don't make a ton of money fighting, especially if you're not fighting in the UFC. So I sold some. I made some investments, and I had to sell them just so I can stay afloat when I was going through that court case and stuff. So I was really dwindling down to nothing, and my mind was getting really bitter toward MMA because MMA is it asks everything of you, like every inch of your soul. It wants everything, but sometimes it gives back nothing. It tells you when it wants to give back, and that you should just every day put your heart and soul into it. So I call it the B word sometimes, and it's really tough. So yeah, I dealt with that, but I'm a pretty positive guy, and I kept my eye on the little light at the end of the tunnel, and we got through it. We persevered and we overcame.
Was there a specific moment you can remember that was the lowest point, and then when you got past that, and was it when the court case ended, or what was that moment?
I think it was when we sat down. We had to settle with Bellator. I think we had to settle. We had a settlement agreement, and I thought I was going to get out of it, or I thought maybe I didn't know what, but we had to end up settling, and the settlement agreement was insane. I shook my head, and I was just like, I'm not ever going to get out of this alive, or it was just a terrible settlement agreement, and I was really disappointed at that time in my life. So.
Hi, this question is for Eddie. Dana White in 2014 promised a UFC card in Puerto Rico. Anthony Pettis lost the title to Rafael dos Anjos. That was put on hold. You are also of Puerto Rican descent. Would you fight in Puerto Rico, and maybe who would you like to fight there if that gets done?
I'd love to fight in Puerto Rico. I would just love to go to Puerto Rico. I've never been there. That sounds like a great place to go right now, to be honest with you. But first and foremost, I would like to sit down and talk with Dana White and Lorenzo Fertitta about bringing the UFC back to Philadelphia. Philadelphia is the biggest fighting town in the country, and the UFC hasn't been there enough. And I think we have a reason to throw a UFC there now, and we'll sell it out for sure.
Sounds good, Eddie. Sounds real good. Kevin Aioli.
Eddie, if I could ask you, in line with what you were talking before, when you fought your first UFC fight, and Dana made a point after you had lost to Donald Cerrone, Eddie maybe should drop down to 145, and you really resisted that. Do you remember back, and was that something that provided even more motivation, like there's another doubter here, or another group of doubters that think I can't do it?
Yeah, that was a quick decision off one fight. I told him right away it wasn't even a thought of mine, but at that time in my life, it wasn't a good time in my life. I lost to Donald Cerrone. A lot of people were saying, oh, he's just a Bellator guy, he'll never make it in the UFC, and my daughter, I had a baby daughter, and she wasn't doing too well at the time. I lived in a different state in Florida. So many things were going not well that I kept telling my wife, something really big's gonna happen. Like something's gotta go really good for us because this is really bad right now. I had a really trouble time just focusing and pay attention to my wife and kids after I lost to Donald Cerrone. Just enjoying life was really tough for me. So I had to overcome that and not be a sore loser about it and step up again and fight another guy.
And I wonder, just get into your head a little bit. I mean, every time I've ever talked to you, you talk about your family. You mention your wife, you mention your family. And when you were going through those tough times, did you ever think, hey, you know what, maybe I will walk away from this because I don't want to put my family through it and get a job and do the regular thing instead of, going through the struggle and being out of money and not knowing where the next paycheck's coming from?
No, I'm stuck in this, man. I'm not good at anything else. I'm gonna be honest. Fighting pays the most. I'm not as good at anything else. And I have 4 children and a wife, and we like to travel and do things and live a good life, and fighting does that for us. So I'm passionate about this. I love it. When I first started it, I paid the promoter maybe $250 so I can fight. So there was no money in this. This was never a career goal for me, ever. This was a hobby that turned into a career.
You referenced Frankie Edgar and your coaches and everything. Were you close with Bernard Hopkins too? Don't I remember that you and Bernard were close? And did he text you or wish you luck at all?
Me and Bernard shared gyms in Philadelphia. I went to Joe Hand's boxing gym, and so did Bernard. Bernard works out sort of on his own. He got his own little entourage. I don't like to step on his toes, or he likes his space. So we shared a gym. We spoke briefly here and there, but just as acquaintances. Hopefully that can change. Maybe we can talk a little bit. I look up to Bernard.
And lastly, I just want to ask you about the ending sequence. It seemed like it was you were aggressive and throwing a lot of punches. Was it the right hand that you felt that you caught Rafael with that was kind of got him on Queer Street and got the fight going your way?
You have to say it like that. I think it was we call it the Anaconda. It's a long right hook. It was called the Brains. Mark Henry called it. Like I said, he calls it, I respond, and then it lands, and we were able to land it. So yeah, I think it was the right. All I remember is Rafael was hurt, and I think we have the same number of fights. This guy's a champion through and through, and you can't allow a guy like that to overcome that situation, because he's going to come back twice as hard at me in the second round. So I just remember just saying, step on the gas and don't let this get out of the first, because if it does, I could be dealing with a long night in Dos Anjos.
We'll take one final question.
Rafael? Hello. Would you mind, guys, if I ask Rafael in Portuguese?
Go ahead.
Rafael, você recebeu muitos socos por mais de 1 minuto ali no final da luta. Como é que você fez para lidar com isso? Como é que você se lembra desse momento? Você acha que você conseguiria seguir lutando? E você acha que, de repente, o juiz interrompeu de uma forma mais cedo do que deveria?
Não, cara, eu acho que o juiz fez certo ali, parou a luta. Eu não estava completamente desmaiado, eu estava vendo as coisas, mas não vou mentir, eu estava meio grogue. Mas não vou reclamar do juiz, não. Eu acho que o Ed Álvares fez um bom trabalho. Ele ganhou do Rafael na melhor forma. Estava numa forma física muito boa, mas a luta é isso. Eu tomei um soco, minha mão, eu estava com a guarda em pé, eu tomei um soco ali por cima da guarda. E, como ele disse agora, ele aproveitou o momento que, se ele deixasse eu sair dali, ia complicar para ele no segundo round. Mas ele, com a experiência, ele foi ali e conseguiu fazer que o juiz parasse a luta. Foi isso.
Certo. Eu te pedi só, por favor, para você mandar um recado em português para os seus fãs no Brasil, que, obviamente, agora o Brasil está sem um cinturão, mas, independentemente disso, um recado após a sua luta, desse momento, que você abordasse também o momento do MMA no Brasil.
É isso aí, galera. Obrigado pela torcida de todos. Luta é isso. Um dia a gente ganha, um dia a gente perde, mas eu tenho certeza que eu vou voltar mais forte ainda. Tô novo, tem muita coisa para melhorar ainda, e conto com a torcida de todos aí.
All right, guys, before we wrap, we have one more press conference tonight, and just if you guys could hang in there. I'm just playing with you guys. I just wanted to say, on behalf of the entire UFC staff to the media, it's been one of the most unpredictable 48-hour stretches that we've probably ever seen in our sport. Thank you for hanging in there with us. Many of you practically slept over last night. And also hats off to the UFC Fight Pass crew and this great card. What a night, what a 48 hours. Let's do it again tomorrow.
July 7th, the UFC's most competitive division takes center stage at MGM Grand. Lightweight champion Rafael Dos Anjos puts it all on the line against striking specialist Eddie Alvarez. Plus, heavyweight knockout artists Roy Nelson and Derek Lewis go fist to fist in a clash that has sudden ending written all over it. UFC Fight Night, Dos Anjos versus Alvarez. Part of the UFC International Fight Week in Las Vegas. Tickets on sale now at Ticketmaster.com.
On Friday, July 8th, UFC International Fight Week hosts a